Hello, everybody, and welcome to Author Content. This is episode number 9945, 9.3. I have,
That's
because
right.
Ray always complains about my numbering system, I have now implemented a random numbering system for our episodes.
Yeah,
So that's what's happening.
which will be more correct more of the time than regularly when you use the sequential one, I think.
Probably. I am, as always, Morton, and with me I have my co-host, Ray Vigilobos. Uh, James
Howdy.
Williamson may or may not join us. He usually comes in late, so we'll see what happens. In the meantime, we, as always, have lots to talk about. So, do you want to
That's
go
right.
first, or should I go first?
I can go first. I've got
Yeah.
this like really interesting thing from Apple. There has been like this rumor that Apple was, of course, is planning some sort of, what do they call it, wearable device.
Hmm.
And there's been a lot of sort of thinking about what that would be. And there's a rumor out there that it's not going to be a watch, that maybe it's going to be some kind of biometric sensors that live within the ear pods. And I thought that is like brilliant. Like it's one of those like, why haven't I thought of that? And it's so obvious that that's where they should put biometric sensors, because most people, I think anyways, like when I go for a walk, I have my headphones on my ears already, and I don't think about it. Whereas, like, if you had some other sort of, I don't know, something you have to tape to yourself, it would be
Yeah.
sort of a pain to add that. But you usually, have your earbuds on, and if they just added some sensors, perhaps they could definitely, keep track of like your heart rate, definitely, because oftentimes, like when you're, I don't know, if you're exercising really hard, like you can actually hear like your heartbeat depending on the kind of earphone that you're wearing, right? Like so,
Uh,
it seems like it would be. I don't know what that is. Maybe I'm just like my blood pressure is too high or something. But uh,
well, it's funny that you mentioned this because if you've ever been in a hospital, you know how they always put like sensor on your finger to keep
yeah,
tabs
definitely.
of your pulse and blood pressure. Now, uh, it's actually a light sensor. It's kind of crazy. It shines light through and then it looks at the blood vessels. Well, you can take that sensor off and put it on your ear if you want to, but it's uncomfortable because if you flip your head around, then the thing is fairly large and flips off. But the ear has a lot of blood vessels in it, and you know if you've ever cut yourself on your ear by accident, like I have,
I try not to. Yeah.
and yeah, I try not to, but it does happen. And holy crap, does your ear bleed? It's really intense. So it would be the right place to put it, for sure. And I think that there's a lot of I have a couple of different tracking devices. Like I have a watch that purportedly tracks your pulse, but it
Mhm.
does not. And I think it's because my wrist is too bony, so it can't like get a full
Yeah.
attachment. So the only way I can do it is by like pushing it into my wrist, and then it'll track my pulse. And I also have
Right. Exactly. Like I was thinking that in the watches, like every time I think about them, if they put some sort of thing on your watch, I always think like, yeah, it never fits. Like you don't want it to fit really tight on your wrist,
well,
but you want
there's
your
that
you want
one.
your ear pods to be snug, So.
There's one called Basis Band or Basis,
Mhm.
which actually does a really good job at it. Let me see if I can find it. Um, and when you look on the back of the Basis, yeah, here it is. Okay, let me share the screen so you can see what I'm talking
So
about.
I have to say that somebody in another article wrote that the rumor was fake, but I
Yeah, of
don't know.
course,
It just like
it's
seems
a
like too
rumor.
logical to be true.
It's a
Yeah, I know,
rumor.
but
That's why
somebody
we
said
can
that
like
it was fake.
extrapolate endlessly on it. Okay, so do
Yeah,
you see this? The Basis Band.
yeah.
So the Basis Band has a bunch of sensors on the back. So when you look at the back of the phone of the watch, it has these points that are actually electrical conductors, and it also has a light that actually shines into your skin and again tracks your pulse. So it doesn't have to touch your skin all the time for it to work, and that's the main thing. Because if you're used to the really old way of doing pulse tracking, you'd have to wear one of those ridiculous bands that goes right under your chest here
Hmm.
that has
Yeah.
like two sensors, one on either side. And if you're, uh, shaped like I am for some reason, like this, it's super annoying because they fall down, and then you keep having to pull them up all the time. until you get really, really sweaty, and then they'll stick to your skin like crazy. But they're unideal, and especially like for women, you'd either have to like put it under the bra strap, or that you can get a bra that has it built in, but then you have to pay like $100 for just that function. Then if it breaks, you have to throw it out and buy a new one. They're not great, and I think that's the reason why a lot of people don't use them. And then these other popular bands, they're always bands that go on your wrist, and then to do things you have to like take it off and charge it all the time, and it's a big hassle. But if it's your phone, like think about it, if it's your headset, it's powered by your phone. So you just charge the phone or your iPad or whatever it is, and then the power comes from that device. You don't have to charge two things. The only thing though is if you want to like wear this constantly, you know how a lot of people, they wear these motion trackers on a daily basis to track their activity throughout the day. You'd have to wear the headsets all the time. So that's why I'm saying, like, that's why when you said it's a rumor, that might actually be the reason why this is not true, is that motion, like the whole point of wearing these trackers is that they track you all the time. But if you can't wear them in your ears all the time. That'd be super annoying if people were.
Yeah, but that would be like, I mean, to me that's like sort of a two-pronged attack. Like you get the watch, but then anytime you exercise, it's so natural to wear headphones when you're working out or when you're exercising. And as a combination, I think there's already been evidence that the iPhones have software built into them that can handle biometric data. There's hints like in some of the developer builds that's already in. So we're just waiting to see what that is. The phone itself has sensors. So it's just going to be what else do you attach to it. And I think headphones sounds like a perfect idea. And also it sounds like just the type of thing that Apple would do that nobody would sort of be thinking about. That's obvious, because that's usually something they do pretty well. Like they come up with something and you go, dude, that's so obvious. Like, why didn't anybody think of that before? And if they're not doing it, somebody else should definitely pick it up, because it just seems like a natural kind of thing. So.
Okay, we have a question from a viewer. If these pods are actually possible, would it stop the kids from walking across the road without looking left and right? With their ear pods, they don't pay attention. I'm not that old, by the way. It would just be a bad idea. I like how you're like, I'm not old.
Have you ever like walked around with like I usually listen to like podcasts or something on my earbuds. You can actually listen to the environment pretty well. So I don't think
that depends on the headset you're wearing, my friend.
Yeah, you're right. If you're wearing like those that are like rubber and they really or a noise canceling, right? But the earbuds themselves, like I can hear the environment pretty well. And you get people that get very angry at you and like honk at you and like are telling you like, look at your head, what's wrong with you? And I'm like, I can hear just fine. I'm just listening to a podcast. I'm not listening to the boombox right now. So.
I'm fairly into music, right?
Yes, I do. You're into like really odd music. So.
Yeah, but like just music in general. Music is a big part of my life. And when I was in high school, like all the way through high school and university, I always listened to music all the time. So I would wear a headset like this one, like a huge headset. Before that was
wow.
I actually had a massive headset that I was wearing, and everyone was like, why are you wearing that headset? It looks so stupid. And now it's like, if you don't wear a massive headset, you're stupid, whatever.
Right.
But I didn't realize that when I listen to music, I'm completely in my own world. Like I'm completely shut off from reality. So people thought I was super rude because they would like try to flag me down on the street, and I would be ignorant of them to the point where they would stand right in front of me, and I would just like navigate past them and not notice that they were my best friend that was standing right there, because I was so. And I see that a lot now, but I don't see it with the headsets. I see it with the phones and the chatting. I was over by the mall close to our house about a week ago, and I think I tweeted about this. There was this girl who was walking, chatting, and she was walking straight at a pole. Like there was a big a lighting like a power pole or something like that, and she was like heading directly at it and had no idea she was chatting. And I was walking behind her and thinking, at what point do I intervene here, right? Should I, like, is she going to notice? And if she notices, like, even if she notices right before, if I kind of like grab her and pull her to the side, she'll react to that, because that's not cool, right? But she kept walking right at it quite rapidly, and then finally I was like, okay, seriously, this is not
You can
going to
just
work.
leave it
So
there, Morton.
I just
What
grabbed
would
her
Morton
shoulder
do?
and like shifted her 1 meter to the right, and then she's like, whoa, what the hell? And then she looks up and is like, oh, there's like a bull right there. And she would have walked directly into it. And I was thinking, you're walking on the side of the road, you know?
Yeah, that is ridiculous
You would
because there's
walk
all
right
kinds of
into
things
the
you're
street
not.
now.
Yeah.
So I if the headset somehow makes people not look at their phones, I actually think it's a good thing. But I don't think that'll happen. It'll just be another thing to distract you from what you're actually doing. So my hope is that the audio from the headset will not leak out because I hate being on buses and stuff and listen to other people's terrible music.
That is true. Yeah, that is true. So have you tried like the Apple earbuds and stuff? They're really comfortable and and you can still hear everything else. But yeah, you're right. If they're wearing those like Beats, which I guess Apple's buying according to rumors, then those things are massive and noise canceling. Yeah. You think they did already?
Yeah.
I don't
My
know.
brother-in-law has the Bose in-ears that like clip onto your ears, and when he's wearing them, the world does not exist. Like the Bose headsets, the Bose headset canceling is unreal. Like if you go to Best Buy because they have them in demos. Go to Best Buy, bring a friend, and then put the headset on, and then have the friend talk to you. Like stand right in front of you and talk to you. You will not hear it.
Get me some of that.
That's why they're so expensive. And but they were designed for planes, right? The idea was you wear them on the plane when you're traveling so that you don't have to hear the plane and everything. And you can imagine how dangerous it is to travel in like outside wearing a headset that cancels out any noise, like an alarm, a bus, a cop car. Like you would not hear it because it basically takes the sound outside and records it, and then it puts in the opposite sound to cancel out the waves. And the Beats headset does the same thing. So once Beats comes out...
Yeah, it's definitely something you want to wear like on a plane because that is so annoying when you go on a plane and you can't even hear your music. So at least I buy like the little rubber ones. I ain't paying like $300 for no earphones though. So that, yeah, the Bose ones will not be...
I paid $300 for no headphones!
That's it. No, man. That's just too much. I don't go on an airplane that often, and the little $20 Sonys work just fine. I don't need. I can still hear the wings a little bit, but what the heck,
So on the topic of Mac rumors, I read an article yesterday about how everyone has to consider responsive images now because the Mac, the new iPhone reportedly is 3x, right? So the resolution is even higher than Retina, right?
Wow.
Now, I have shocking news to the Mac world. The Nexus 5, the phone that's been out for 6 months, is already 3x. This is not new.
No, see,
and
this is where you get it
people
wrong.
have that phone. A lot of people have that phone.
I bet you.
For whatever reason, people are like, we're not going to change our behavior until Apple does it. We don't care that the rest of the world has already done it, but when Apple does it, that's when it's real. So.
No. See, Apple would never call anything 3X. They would rebrand it as... Yeah, they'll rebrand it as something else, and then it will be completely different. Like, it's 3K, but... I think if they do anything, they're going to do... I bet you they're going to call it, like, 4K, because that's, like, the next thing coming up on TVs. Like, they're going to go 4K on their phones.
I'm sure they are.
And they'll make a killing.
Yeah, I'm sure they will. But it actually, there's a valid point there. All these devices are becoming extremely high resolution, and responsive images are supposed to handle that. But the reason is because all the responsive images, examples and demos that you find on the web, talk about how you account for regular resolution and 2x resolution. But you have to also consider 3x resolution. So basically, you have to consider these very high resolution images that you need to upload for those devices. But then at the same time, you also have to consider, but those devices are on a mobile network. So when you're downloading an 18 megabyte photo to illustrate something in your post, just to match the resolution, you're downloading 18 megabytes of useless data just to...
I mean, that's the issue with responsiveness that I have a problem with, because To me, like the network speeds, we're just gonna keep on getting faster according to
Mhm.
like Moore's law. So I think we're just like chasing something that is not gonna be that. It is a big deal now, and I do agree, but it's just not gonna be that big of a deal, in 4 or 5 years, where then hopefully the network speeds would catch up, and then we're creating this whole entire picture element with this weird complex way of like having to add multiple resolution images, and I don't know. I'm too
Yeah,
pragmatic
so
for that.
on the topic of the picture element, let me show you something. So we talked a couple of weeks ago about
Mhm.
the picture element with James. He just emailed me, by the way. He's running errands. Like, remember that time when you were at the mall and you didn't come to the show? Now James is at the mall, so we'll harass him about that next week.
Got it.
Okay, so a couple of weeks ago we talked about the picture fill JavaScript that you can use to use the picture element in your sites right now.
Mhm.
And I said that I'm working on a WordPress theme, so it would be cool if I could actually build that in. And I've been doing a lot of thinking about how, like, where would you put a picture element in the WordPress theme? Because WordPress does these cool things, like generates multiple different versions of your images in different sizes, and you can specify those image sizes. And then you could call them in so that you would say, like, here's a very large image for a large screen and a smaller image for a smaller screen. And that's kind of already automated in the back end. So I was trying to figure out where's the natural place of putting this. And the answer I came up with was in the featured images. So the theme that I have right now, the one that I'm shipping, is has a very large featured image at the top of each post. You see it's right here, it's gigantic. Um, and when you scale down, the image, of course, gets smaller. And when you're on your phone, you don't want this gigantic image to load up. So what I did on the back end, if I go and look at the element here, you'll see I actually implemented the picture element. So here we have the picture element. And it has a default image size, and the default image size that I implemented is the smallest screen. So by default, it loads up the tiniest image you could possibly get, and then it loads up screen widths for. I think I use a media query to target screens over 800 pixels wide, and then over 400 pixels wide, and then anything else. And I'm using the predefined image sizes that are already in my theme to call in these different sizes. And it actually works quite well. Now, to make that happen, I had to make a function in my WordPress theme. This is where it gets kind of ridiculous. The problem with the picture fill and the picture element is that when you call in one image, you actually have to put in multiple different calls to different images. So you're basically saying, here's the large version of the image, and the medium version of the image, and the small version, and also the 2x versions for each of them. So if you're using a solution like WordPress, you would then make a call to the database for each image. So you go and say, give me the big version, the medium version, and the small version. And that means, whereas before you would make one call to the database for one image, you're now making 3 or 4 or 5 calls to the database for 3 or 4 or 5 different image sizes, but you're not necessarily using them. So what you're doing is you're going to the database and saying, can I have the URL to this image,
Mhm.
just in case I want to use it. And to do that in WordPress, it would basically mean if you were on an index page that had 10 posts, and all the 10 posts had a featured image, before you would make 10 calls. With the new picture element, you now make 40 calls because it's 4
Ugh.
different image sizes.
Yeah, nobody's gonna
So
do that, man.
to solve that, I then said, well, okay, I need to make a caching function. So basically, we make the call once, and then we make a cache that has all the URLs, right? So we make one single element. So you just call that one single element, and then it has all the necessary URLs and displays them. This is not default in WordPress because, of course, picture element isn't ratified yet. So I had to build it myself. And what you're seeing here on my screen is that caching function. So here I first go and say, give me all these different sizes. So here we have, I get the attachment URL post ID, and then I get each of the sizes. Oh no, this is an old version. This doesn't have the caching yet, but the caching is on my computer. But basically, this is what it used to look like. So this is why it's a problem. Here we have I go to the database and I say, give me the post ID for the current featured image, and then go and give me the full version, the thumb version, the medium thumb version, the small thumb version, and also the alternate description. So I'm basically making 5 calls to the database to get, no, 6 calls to the database just to get the information I need, and then display it. So what I'm working on now is a caching function that does this call once and then stashes all that data in an array. And then the next time someone calls up the page, they'll just call that array and then get the information. So we go 6 or 8 calls the first time, and then the second time it's just 1. The problem, of course, because there's always a problem, is that when you're using a WordPress site, you might want to change the featured image. So I also have to flush the cache anytime the featured image is changed. So if you go in and edit the featured image or swap it out, then the cache has to be flushed. Otherwise, it'll still display the old one, right? The problem is...
You're losing me fast.
The problem is there's no way of tracking when that image is changed. What you can do is track anytime the post itself is edited and then dump the cache. But you can't say only dump the cache if the image has been changed. So right now, I've been like for 2 days banging my head against the wall trying to figure out how to trick WordPress into telling me when the image has been changed, because there's no function that does that automatically. And it's actually an omission. It's one of those, there should be a function for this, but for some reason there isn't. So right now I have to like go into the database itself and look for the change, which is ridiculous and should not be necessary. So, but it's coming. So eventually I'll actually have a proper function, and I'm writing a huge article on the lynda.com article center about this. So you can implement responsive images as featured images in your WordPress themes once I figure it out.
That will be really, I'll be really glad that you've implemented all that, because I certainly don't want to do any of that. And I just think people are just not going to do it, and it's going to be a big waste of time. And eventually the speeds. Yeah, some people are going to do it, like you, we're nuts. And the rest of the people are just going to be, ooh, this WordPress template looks really pretty. It's got like hearts and unicorns. That's the one I want. Yeah. And they're just going to do the normal thing.
Well,
now, if it was built into WordPress core, then perhaps.
Well, that's the
But still, if you got to upload... Right? Eventually, if you gotta upload 10 images for every, forget it, dude. Nobody's gonna do that.
You don't upload 10 images. You just upload 1, and then WordPress crops them down for you. And in your theme,
and it's gonna be really bad crops.
Well, they're just crops, but you can kind of control it a bit. But normally, it's just a size. So in my theme, it's just a size. I'm not cropping them. I'm just scaling them down. So there's like a small version of the image, and a medium, and a large version. And then if you're on a high-resolution screen, you're loading the image that's one size up. So if you're on a small screen, you're loading the medium image. And if you're on a large screen, you load the original image, which is bigger than the large size.
So what happens like when you rotate your big iPad?
It actually works really well with that picture fill function, the JavaScript.
Does it have to like, does it have to like reload another image?
So basically what happens is you're in the picture element, you define all the sizes using media queries. So you say like the biggest size is the top one, and then the next biggest size, and then the smaller and smaller and smaller, and then the bottom you have the smallest one. And then when the page loads, the picture fill JavaScript goes to the browser and says, what size are you? And then, okay, I'm going to use this line to make that work. And then it'll pick the correct line in your stack and only load that image. So if you're on a small browser, and you load the page, you'll only load the smallest image. And then when you scale up the browser, you actually can watch the new sizes load in dynamically as you scale it up. And you kind of get a snapping action when it happens, because it's loading in a new image, but it's almost transparent. And it's the actual flexing of the browser width is not something people do. That's something people like us do, and it's ridiculous. But
I disagree. See, I disagree that people don't do that, because I do that all the time when I go to websites. I'm like, oh, this is not. Let me make it bigger, and so you're gonna burn through like every single size of that image when you make your browser bigger. Or like if you're on a mobile device and you rotate, you're going to at least download 2 different big images, right? Like if you're on an iPad and you've got this big, and you rotate, and now you've got this big. Now you've got 2 different things loading.
That's why you use the media queries. That's why you really have to think about where you have the trigger points, right? That's what I encountered. Like when I was working on this, I was thinking about, at what point should what image load and which load of my image, and then, should these scale or not? And you have to do a lot of thinking about that and in which scenarios different images load. So I have a size of the image that's 400 pixels wide. The reason why it's 400 pixels wide and not 320 pixels wide is because your iPhone is simulating 320 pixels wide. Like the larger Android phones, they're like 400, 410. There's like random sizes like that. So what I said was, if you're on an iPhone, you get the 400 image just squished down, right? Actually, when you're on an iPhone, you'll get the medium size squished down because it's high resolution. But if you were on a 320 phone, you would get a 400 picture squished down. And if you're on an iPad, you would get the medium size, even though the medium size is bigger than the iPad. You would get the medium size because it'll scale it a little bit down to fit. And then you also get a higher resolution when you squish the images. So implementing the picture element requires a lot of thinking about screen widths and when the different images should load and what the fallbacks are and what happens in all these different scenarios. So it requires, like, you have to really think about it. It's not just add an image. It went from add a featured image, click a button, or add it into the theme. You just add like the featured image function, to write a function that's like 80 lines long and do all this crazy stuff in the back end just to make it work and load a JavaScript to do the same thing. Like for the end user, there's no difference. The only difference is they load slightly less data than they did before. So it's a little bit over the top, but there's some tremendous potential in this once we get tapped in. So the goal is, once I figure this out and everything works properly, I might suggest that something like this get baked into WordPress core so that it automatically happens, so you don't have to write the whole function. And then, of course, someone's going to then probably take what I did and completely rewrite it and then make it work as a core element, in theory. Of course, that's we'll see what happens. I'll have to figure it out first.
Yeah, so what did you think of this week's like FCC's sort of backtracking on net neutrality? There's this issue that the FCC was going to allow the different sort of speed lanes on the internet, and they of course got a lot of like email. They were sending people actually to asking people to send them email and not call them, because they were of course getting way too many calls because people got really upset. And now they're sort of backtracking and saying, well, we need to do something else because that's, obviously people don't really like this. I mean, do you see that? I mean, I sometimes I see the argument from the cable companies a little bit that, it is more expensive to put all these pipes in, so maybe they should be compensated, but then,
No. No.
Right.
They're not putting the cables there. That's not why they want control. That's the thing. That's what they say. That's not actually why they want control. That's like, if what you were saying was true, that they want to charge extra because Netflix bogs down the network. If that was the case, then sure. The problem is, that's not the reason why they want to do this. The reason why they want to do this is because Netflix is eating their profits. Every single cable company that puts a cable into your house that you can get internet from also has a streaming video service, a video on demand service that they want to sell.
And it's horrible.
Video on demand service is crap. It's super expensive, right? So everyone watches videos from Amazon or iTunes or any other service other than the cable provider. And the cable provider is like, hey, why is no one buying our stuff? So instead of saying, maybe it's because it's too expensive and total crap, they go, why don't we just make it impossible to watch the other services? And that's what they're trying to do. So like, they say that it's one thing, that's not the reason. This is the actual reason. They want you to buy stuff off them. And that's why this cannot happen. Because, and they kind of, like, when you read their argumentation, it kind of shines through too. It's very badly masked. So, there are actually good arguments for throttling speeds on certain services. Things like throttling speeds on BitTorrent, unless BitTorrent gets under control, is actually a legitimate thing. Throttling speed on a service that eats up too much bandwidth for no good reason is a good reason. throttling speed on services because they're popular is not what we are looking for. And the problem
Yeah,
with this doing this is because if you have a great idea that requires a lot of bandwidth, you will have no way of getting the bandwidth you need because you won't have the
yeah,
money
and
to pay for it.
plus like if I pay for 50 megs per second, if I'm paying for that speed, I expect to get that speed from my service provider. I don't want Netflix throttle because I'm supposed to get 50 megs per second. I'm paying for it, so
So,
let me have it. I mean, so
so what the FCC has done, this statement that they came out with yesterday, is an impressive feat of rhetoric. Uh, what they're saying is they won't allow the network providers to limit band speed, like bandwidth speed. They don't want to limit bandwidth speed on content. However, they can provide fast lanes. So instead of forcing everyone into a slow lane, they can provide fast lanes for certain services, right? So like Netflix would get a faster lane than other people.
that sounds like the same
That
thing,
is exactly the same thing as slowing down everyone else. Because all they have to do is say, yeah, we're going to give Netflix the fast service. And then, by the way, because of bandwidth congestion, we're slowing down the overall speed of the entire network and other reasons. Like, it's so easy for them to get around that. And that's kind of the problem with all this. When you start looking at it, it's like, who makes the decisions here? Everyone on the internet does not want this to happen, except for the cable providers. The cable providers spend something around 800% more on lobbying towards the FCC than the rest of the internet does, because the rest of the internet simply doesn't have that kind of money. So, of course, the people who pay the most money will get their way. This is a problem with the American system, that you can pay your way into a system, right? And the result is that you have a board that's set there to protect the rights of the consumer and the constituents, and they care more about the people who are providing the service than they do about the people who are using the service. So their priorities are all messed up. What's going to happen is they are doing a public hearing now, so you can go, like if you're in the United States, or if you're an American expatriate, you can email and say how much you hate this. The result is they're going to get like 500 gazillion emails telling them that they're wrong. They're going to go, well, there's this extremist group of people on the internet that are against this, but we think it's a good idea, so we're going to do it anyway. And then in December, they're going to pass this regardless of what we say. And then
you think? I don't know. I don't think they're going to get away with it.
They've done it before.
I don't think they're going to get away with it.
This has happened before. This is not new. This happened with broadcasting, right? There's actually precedent.
They are really, they're definitely trying to shove it down like any which way they can, and they're trying to find new ways of rebranding it so that at some point, and also what that does is, whatever signatures they had or support people showed before has to be done over and over and over and over again until people sort of get sick of it, and maybe eventually it'll pass. I mean, it's not good that the guy who's the head of the FCC was a previous cable company employee, so I wonder if there's anything happening there. That's not good either.
So, so Jane Ann Thompson is saying, I have Sky and it's well cheap for what we get. So based on your language, I'm going to say you live in England.
Almost, yeah. Not me.
What time is it in London?
I don't know.
Yeah, it's funny because it's too bad James isn't here, because James has told us before about how where he lives, there's only one service provider, so there's no options, and that service provider is terrible. So he gets bad service and that's it. I'm not sure what it is like where you are. Like, how many options do you have?
There's 3 providers. I can't use one because I have too many trees on my property, so I can't use satellite. So there's the phone, which has like a tenth of maybe a third or fourth of the speed, and then cable, which has the nice, decent web speed. So that's really the only choice I have, unless I want to be really, really slow. So I wouldn't consider it. I wouldn't consider it like a whole lot of choices. I mean, I have essentially 2, which are slow and normal. So there's really not, a lot they can do. I can choose between the speeds because I'm paying only for internet. I don't have cable or anything anymore.
Yeah.
So yeah, I wouldn't qualify that as being lots of choices. I think we could definitely use some more.
Yeah. I think here in my house I can get Shaw or Telus. Yeah. I have two options. There are actually three options, but one of them is not available everywhere. And both those options are colossally expensive and terrible. And we actually have bandwidth caps. We have both throttling and bandwidth caps because the Canadian government doesn't care. So I can only get, like, you have to pay if you want more data download. They cap, like if you have too much traffic going in and out, they'll actually cap it. So I ran into that problem when I was uploading videos to Linda, that I maxed out my cap and then my internet slowed down. And I had to call them and be like, why are you slowing uploads down? And they came up with some ridiculous reason, like, well, you shouldn't be uploading video files to the internet. That's illegal. And I'm like, I own this material. What the hell are you talking about? But when you go outside and you look at other countries, you'll notice that they have far stricter regulations on the cable providers. And in some countries in Europe, they actually have laws that say things like everyone must have the ability to access broadband internet. So the cable providers are mandated to pull lines into remote areas where no one lives, just so that the one person who's there gets broadband internet. And it is.
Why would they do that on purpose? Move to like really obscure areas.
All the evil regulation people are so afraid of results in better service for the consumers. So the only people who are afraid of it are the people who have to put down the lines. There is one shining beacon of hope in the United States, and that is Chattanooga, Tennessee. Have you heard about this?
What?
So
No.
Chattanooga, Tennessee, the reason why all these big tech companies are moving there is because they have a publicly owned broadband system that's 100 megabit for everyone. So basically what happened was the citizens of Chattanooga said, why should we rely on some random privately owned corporation who just wants to take our money to provide internet? Why don't we just set it up ourselves? And then they did. They just put down fiber. And this is kind of the funny part about the whole net neutrality thing. There is an actual solution here. It's called public service. You get the government that you all hate to install internet in the ground, and then you plug into it and you pay for it through your taxes. Then that's no longer an issue, because that service won't be reliant on earning money for their investors. Their only priority will be providing internet services. Now, I'm saying that, and it's a total pipe dream, because even in socialist countries that doesn't happen. But that's the actual solution to it, is publicly owned broadband, so that you don't have a corporation whose only premise is earn more money, right? And the reality is, this is just cables in the ground. This is not a service. It's like, this can be done, but it requires a rethink of the whole system.
Yeah. That's not going to happen.
I know. I'm telling you, like, I'm giving you the solution. And then I'm saying, like, why is it not happening? It's because, I don't know, because people don't like it.
Well, it's, the thing, not to get too political, the issue is, like, I don't want my government raising taxes for something that they're going to do. Let's say that they go ahead and do it, right? Yeah. And then they're going to still want that tax money, so they're going to find a way of keeping the taxes even after it's built out, and that, you know what?
No.
Gross.
What? No. You know that fire truck that comes to your house when your house is on fire that you don't pay for?
No, we pay for it.
You paid for the fire truck?
Right?
No, yeah, that's
we paid for taxes. Yeah,
yes,
exactly.
You're paying for it, but you're not personally cashing out like $50,000 for the fire truck when your house is on fire. That just happens, right? If the problem is,
it doesn't just happen. We do pay for that.
Yes, but you don't pay $50,000. You maybe pay $50,000 over the lifespan of your house, right? It's correct. Because everyone pulls into it, and then everyone draws out what they need. That's why it works. It works. That's why you have roads and cops. Fire department. So what
else is going on in the web world, Morten?
Before you go nuts. It's very hard.
Yes, I love this. So let's see what else is happening.
I have
a really cool thing for you to look at, because I was at this like startup studio that's down here in Orlando, and they have this, every month they have a meeting called Orlando Tech Meetup, and different companies come in and kind of show the startup ideas that they're working on. And I found one that I thought was pretty cool, but I wanted to get your opinion on it because it's a very simple idea. The main premise is that tools like Mailchimp are very complicated, and writers who just want to be able to have a mailing list and send email marketing to the people that like to hear about them want a simpler solution for email marketing so that they don't have to go through. Have you ever used Mailchimp at all?
Uh-huh.
It's pretty cool. Like, it's awesome, but it's kind of like it's gotten a little bulky, I think.
Yeah.
So do you think, I mean, if you sign up for this is pretty easy. You click sign up, and then you put in, let's see, Ray Lobos, like, I'll put in my Gmail address, right, and some sort of thing here. So you hit sign up, and boom, I already signed up. So, okay. Already signed up, so it's actually detected that I was in there already. So, but it's a very simple sign up, and when you do it, it's a very simple interface. You write the email marketing thing in Markdown, so you just create very quickly your Markdown text thing that you want to send, and it just works. And it's just sort of a super simplified version of Mailchimp. Without, I mean, you can start sending your emails within a minute of signing up,
right?
And so you hit new email. And then you go to hello world, email body, then you start with your Markdown text.
Right, so there's no like fancy layouts or graphics or anything like that. It's just it's just a text.
Yeah, just email. Like this. Yeah. Second, I mean, the email is technically HTML, but the way that you create it is just by using Markdown little tags, and you don't go through that whole sort of process of choose a layout and then like edit the layout, and then you're like, oh, how the heck do I edit this layout? You switch to HTML mode, and then you're trying to like do it's a little bit much. So, what are your thoughts on this? I mean, do you think this kind of thing would work? Yeah.
Yeah, there's a definite market for this. I'm always, these email subscription services are starting to bug me because they spend so much energy on these fancy layouts, and then you get the email and you're reading it on your phone, and the layout is completely messed up because
totally useless, right?
It's all fixed with and totally horrible. And people get so distracted by, oh, you can add an image here and a logo there, and they're forgetting that the only thing people care about if they're subscribing is the actual content. So this is the right approach. And yeah, it's true. Mailchimp is, once you understand it, it's awesome. Getting to that point, even with all the tutorials, takes time. It's a real investment in effort to just get up and running because there's so much to it, and all these other things are the same. So a very simple solution, especially for someone who's just publishing straight up content, is awesome. And if they have an API, so you can like hook it to your site, and automatically pull in content, that'd be even better. And I'm sure that's going to happen too. That's cool.
Yeah, so this is very like early on. They just starting to work on this, but I really there were 3 different projects that were being discussed, and this is the one that I thought was kind of the coolest, the one that I actually wanted to use. There was another one that had to do with communications like inside residential areas, like either apartment complexes or gated communities who need to be able to put in like requests for work and requests for things. That one was like probably the one that would be able to make some sort of money quicker, but it really needed a better interface. And then there was another dude that was doing canvas-based layout generating by right-clicking on different things. It's kind of odd, but this is the one that I thought like, wow, I could really use this because I love Mailchimp, but it's kind of gotten a little bit complex, even for me, and I'm fairly technical, so.
What?
Maybe this will work.
How do you have 35 subscribers and no emails?
Oh, I think it's just, again, this is very early beta, so I think some of this stuff is just not quite all there. Yeah, it's just really, I think at this point it was just a demo that they wrote as a proof of concept, and some of it is functional, so they're really, I think, looking for feedback. So.
I think we're going to see a lot of this. this type of approach where you say, I am going to take an existing idea that's already out there that has kind of overgrown itself and become a monster, and just distill only what people actually want, and then make a super simple service that just does this one thing for one specific target market. And I truly think that there is value in those things, because when you are just looking for distributing newsletters that just have content, then services like MailChimp are massive overkill. It's just so much stuff to do something very, very basic. And there are lots of examples where you could have the same approach. So that'd be interesting to follow and see.
Yeah, that could be like a whole sort of new set of web applications, like things that are just super simple. Think about what happened with like a lot of sort of simple editors that Word was out. Word was out there. Everybody was using Word, but it just got so bulky that it was really hard to just write something. So there's a whole class of web apps and applications for your iPads and phones that just simplify that experience. Like, let's get rid of all the clutter and just focus on writing. So I could see a lot more applications that say, hey, whatever you're doing, you just want it to be simpler. How do we make it easier and quicker? So,
yeah. I have something too. Let's see. I don't think I mentioned this before. It's I stumbled upon it when I was looking for examples of how to do Flexbox. So Google is doing a lot of interesting things. Like, they're pushing out a lot of developer resources. And they have this website called developers.google.com. And if you go to developers.google.com/web/fundamentals, you get this Web Fundamentals Handbook. And the Web Fundamentals Handbook is very extensive and gives you best practice examples of how to do things, but it's very future forward. So if you go to like multi-device layouts here, it gives you examples of responsive, like it breaks it down very easily. So this takes the whole site, takes like a half hour to read everything on the site. It's very short and very, very, very condensed. So if you go to responsive web design patterns as an example, then they explain the general thinking behind it, and then they show you different patterns and how they would stack so that you understand it. And then they give you the code examples. So here you see it's using Flexbox to do things. And then they give you a code example for different types of patterns. And for each of them, you can go and watch the sample. So here's the sample of one of them, and then you can like flex it and see what happens when you scale the different sizes.
Wow, that's cool, yeah.
And it's cool because they give you the actual code, and you see how simple it is. It's like, I want this layout, and just grab this code and just put it into my CSS, and then it'll just work. And it even has, the WebKit fallback and everything. So, of course, this is Flexbox, and James will tell you that this is a little bit, it's a little bit ahead. There's a lot of browsers don't support it yet.
I wonder, it's probably awesome in Chrome, and probably sucks in like IE.
But it's coming, right? It's one of those, you need to think about what's coming next. And they also have navigation and action patterns where they suggest where you should put your menus. So they are making suggestions that you should put extra stuff in the tab bar so that when people navigate with their thumbs, they don't have to stretch their thumb to the top of the screen. There's a lot of really good information on the site. And it's also on GitHub, and you can actually send stuff to it and make changes to it if you want to, and like suggest new things to happen. So I really like where this is going, this thinking that they're actually sharing, instead of just saying you should make better websites. they actually say you should make better websites. Let us show you how. So if you're looking to get kind of an overview of what the web should be and where things are going, you can go to that site and just like read through the examples, and you get a fairly good idea of all these new things with mobile first and responsive design and typography and all these things. They're all like very easily laid out, and I'm sure there's going to be far more content on that site very soon.
That's a cool resource. They just need to do. I've often been thinking that I don't really want to write articles so much anymore. Like, I'm really happy recording videos of things, and I think that those sites sometimes, I wonder how much people will sit there and actually read through everything and like grab the code samples.
But that's
those things are really cool. But
you saw how little text there was. It's like, here's the responsive layout. It just says like, This responsive layout uses uses Flexbox to display 3 different boxes in the following way. And then there's a code example. There's no elaborate explanation of the reasoning behind it or anything. It just shows
No,
like
I definitely, yeah.
description,
That's definitely the thing I think. Yeah.
example.
I really do love about certain things, and that's kind of my approach like towards teaching. Like, let's get rid of the crud and simplify and show people how to do it simple, so that they can go and do the complex examples. I hate to see books with like really, 10 pages worth of code, and you're supposed to type all that because they don't, have it anywhere, and get it just perfect, and then you kind of maybe understand what they're talking about, and 80% of it is like not relevant to what they're actually trying to teach you. So I really appreciate like really tight examples.
That's why I like this example, because like this site, because it does away with a lot of the stuff and just gives you kind of here's how you do it. This is what it looks like. End of story. If you want to learn more, here are links to like the epically long articles that are the reasoning behind it, but you don't need to read it. You can just apply it right now. So we're almost out of time. I just wanted to answer this one question that came from Jane Ann in London. It's still very annoying.
She told you, I think she.
It's still very annoying when you're in company. When they get a text and laugh. So you're in kind of a limbo waiting for them to share the joke. We're all guilty.
Yeah, no, especially when you're talking to them and they start laughing and they're not paying attention to you. They're like paying attention to text or something else. Yeah, that's kind of annoying.
You've seen those pictures, right, of like a whole table full of people where everyone is like,
I've been in those pictures.
Fun hanging out with your friends there on the phone while you're, there's a weird behavioral patterns that have come out of these smartphones. I observe it when I'm on public transit too, that before people would have books and they would sit there and read the books, but a lot of people would just sit and stare into nothing. And now everyone has their smartphone and everyone is sitting there doing stuff. And I wonder always, what does this do to our necks? Because we're always sitting like this. Can't be good. There must be some sort of wear and tear damage that happens to it. But it'll be curious when all these new wearable devices start really kicking in, like the watches and the glasses and the whatever else is coming. Because there's a whole range of Android watches that are being pushed out now. And I'm sure Apple's going to have some sort of wearable device. And Google Glass was just released out of beta, or it was released into public beta this week. So now you don't have to apply, you can just buy it. And that means a lot more people are going to have that. Of course, Google Glass is still weird. And
yes.
We'll get Doug to come back and talk about it because he made a course about Google Glass and he has been wearing it for a while. So we'll try to.
Yeah, but that price tag is like a little extreme.
But it's
isn't
because
it
it's
still
in beta. Yeah, it's 1500. It's still in beta. What they're shipping now is not the public product. So the public product will be cheaper and probably look way better and be.
Hats off to Google for having that approach about things. Like let people play with it. Let them try it out.
But also remember that Google has a bad tendency of going, nah, and then just
that wasn't that great.
It's like, oh, you invested all this time and effort into building something for this? We don't care. You like Wave? Yeah. Too bad. We're deleting it off the servers. Everything you did in it is gone.
That's part of what makes them gutsy. Sometimes you got to do that. Like, if it doesn't work, it didn't work. Let's just move on. Do something else.
It's absolutely the right approach, and they obviously are really invested in Google Glass, and I'm sure they have. I'm sure what they're actually thinking of for the real product, so not this beta thing, is going to be fundamentally different from what they have right now.
Yeah, and, it's going to be like Google Glass, contacts, I think.
So it'll be cool.
Like in Mission Impossible, they had those.
We'll see, and then we have to start thinking about how to make content that works with those weird things.
Oh.
Responsive Google Glass design.
There you go. Essential training.
Essential training. All right, that is full time for authored content. Thank you all for watching, especially you, Jane Ann. I know we didn't answer all of your questions, but it's because the question pod is kind of slow. So you ask a question, but then we've already gone past the subject. So try to like think of the question before we talk about it, and then it'll be easier to get it.
Yes,
If you
indeed.
do watch the show and you want to ask questions, you can actually ask questions ahead of time. So if you go to the Google Hangouts page for each scheduled event, you can actually put in questions ahead of time, and then they'll be queued up when we start the show. So then we can answer your questions, and then even if you can't watch the show, you can come and watch it later on YouTube and see the answers to the questions there. It's actually really neat. So check it out. Next week, we'll be back again. Same bad time, same bad channel. We'll try to bring in Doug to talk about Google Glass. So if you are interested in what it's like to be a cyborg, that would be the show to tune into. And James promised he'll be back from the mall. It'll probably take him a week, but he will eventually come back. And he has a recap of a conference that he really wanted to talk about, so we'll do that too. And other things. All right. Thank you all for watching. Thanks to Ray Vigilobos for co-hosting as always. The Flash. Are you going to watch the TV show when it comes out?
Dude, that looks amazing. I was like, I don't really love Arrow at all, and I didn't really want to like this new Flash, but there's a new preview of it, and it looks incredible. So I don't know, I have no idea. Oh, most definitely. I think it looks really awesome. So if you haven't seen the preview, make sure you go to YouTube. And I am very impressed. Everything looks pretty cool. Like the special effects look pretty cool. The writing looks pretty good. So I am very excited because Flash is my favorite superhero. By
Wasn't
far.
there a Flash TV show in the 90s?
Oh, yes. Yeah, it was okay. I mean, but it just...
It was like a soap opera.
It was like a rubberized kind of, yeah. It got a little soap opera-y. It was a product of its time, I think. Something now where they could really do the effects justice could be a lot better. That show, if you watch it now, is completely hilarious. Because it's like a lot of bikers, and they're all wearing like 80s clothes. It's very, very weird to watch it now.
All right, so
I'm excited for that one. So.
Ray will bring a full review of the Flash show when it comes out and tell us how awesome it is so we don't have to watch it.
Oh, yes. Right on.
Okay, we will see you all next week. Goodbye.